Opinions expressed on ACB Radio are those of the respective program contributors and cannot be assumed to serve as endorsements of products or views of the American Council of the Blind, its elected officials, or its staff.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Herbie's Cooking Corner for April 12th, 2022. Somebody was trying to scare everybody earlier and make us think, me think at least it was April 15th, but you still got a few days to send your taxes in, which, by the way, I do take food tributes. Oh, wait a minute. So today we are going to make steak, garlic mashed potatoes, and steamed broccoli, and you're probably wondering, how am I going to do all three things in an hour? Pretty easily, actually. We just need the right equipment, and we can do it. So first of all, let's welcome in my assistant, Twinkling Tori. Good afternoon to you there, Tori.
Hello.
All right, so Tori's going to be cooking along with me, but she's going to have to do some things a little bit differently. So I'm going to be using real steak, real garlic mashed potatoes. And Tori, why don't you tell everybody what you'll be making?
I will be catering for the fact that I'm a vegan and my dad, who's due to arrive just as his call ends, is very garlic sensitive, so can't handle even the smell of garlic. So I will be making tofu steaks and Herbie mashed potatoes.
All right. And by the way, a few weeks ago I did make Victoria flavored chocolate sponge cake, but it's not named after Victoria. Just like the potatoes are not named after me. So
No,
let's
not Herbie.
No, unfortunately not. Okay, so let's start by talking steak here, guys. So the steak I'm going to be using is my personal favorite, which is the ribeye. I find that has the most flavor, and it's really helped by the marbling of the steak. However, there are some other variants you can get depending on your preference. New York strip is also pretty good, and if you want more healthier, you can go with sirloin. You could even go with smaller and just some like round steaks. And if you want to go more fancy, you can do like filet mignon, London broiled, that type of thing. Those have some okay flavor, but I'm just not a big fan of those ones. And now there are multiple ways that you can cook steak. If you are not comfortable with flipping, what you may want to do is use the oven and put them in a foil-lined pan and season them. How long you cook them, of course, is going to depend on the thickness of the steak and how well you want your steak. I generally cook mine for about 40 or so minutes, because I like mine more done, but it really does depend on your preference. So, I'm not going to use the oven. I'm actually going to use an indoor grill. So I have a cool gadget over here that I've talked about before, actually. My air fryer / grill combination. And the grill, I think, makes some really good steaks. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get the grill plate heated up, because that'll start to save some time. And takes a few minutes to heat up anyway. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to season my steak. Now, there are a number of ways that you can get the steak seasoned. I'm going to do what I think really works well for me, where I'm going to cheat and use a pre-made steak seasoning. And what I'm going to do, though, is to season the steak and to not get crud on the grill, I'm going to put them on a separate plate. So I'm going to, you hear the plastic bag that has the steaks in it, and they come in your typical meat type container. You can feel what the steak feels like through the plastic film, and sometimes I try to get like the family pack. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's less work because you only have one tray to deal with, but that's okay. Ideally, you could put foil on the plate just to protect it from raw meat, but it's going to get washed anyway, so it doesn't matter. And always remember, when you have something that has had raw food on it, you do not want to reuse it. You want to immediately put it in the sink for washing or for later use. But, so like, for instance, don't use a cutting board that you had raw chicken on to serve your barbecue chicken or whatever. So now I'm putting these on the plate. I'm going to wash. These are some nice, juicy, thick steaks. And the other thing I do need to mention, though, with steak is, they can get a little bit pricey, especially in these COVID days. So you may have to, depending on your budget too, or whatever. I find that adding just a tiny little bit of butter helps the seasoning stick. So I'm just going to spread a tiny bit onto the steak. I'm just using the spreadable butter. I find it just helps make it stick a little bit better. You, of course, don't have to do this. You can just go straight for the seasoning. Now, there's many variants on seasonings. You can, for instance, do your own homemade seasoning. One I have used in the past is a mixture of like a little bit of garlic salt, seasoned salt, and some pepper. And or you can use garlic powder instead of the garlic salt, or just some seasoned salt and some pepper. And Tori, how do you season your tofu steaks?
Well, normally, if my dad wasn't coming, I would be using salt, pepper, and garlic powder. But because my dad is coming, I'm substituting garlic powder for onion powder.
All right. Yes, onion powder is another good one. And you can also use olive oil, and also, free plug, if you join the Small Tech Appliances group on Facebook, which is put on by Jeannie, who does the It's Electric haul. She has a very awesome steak seasoning that, especially works for air fryer steaks on that group that you'll have to find the recipe. It does date back to last year. I'm not going to give it out for free because that would lose the incentive of joining the group. It's more of like a rub you can use. So that's for steak and air fryer steak and baked potatoes. So there you go. If you can join that particular Facebook group, or come on the It's Electric call, and Jeannie can also help you, tell you where to go to find the group that way. And I'll look up the name if I have time. So the only thing I will mention with that one is it is a little bit salt heavy though. So all right, now I've got my steak seasoning. There are a lot of pre-made ones you can buy. I'm going to use the McCormick Montreal steak seasoning. There's also a Chicago brand and quite a number of others. If you are allergic to garlic, a lot of these do use garlic powder, so I will mention that. Thankfully, this household does not have that problem. Okay, so it comes in a square bottle, and like most seasonings, it has a film that I'm peeling off. So I took off the lid, I peeled back the plastic film, threw it away. I'm going to put the lid back on because we're just going to sprinkle this. We don't need to dump it. And so now I'm hovering over steak number 1. I'm going to sprinkle some. I'm going to flip the steak over. So when I buttered it, I buttered both sides to help the seasoning stick. And that way more of it will go into the steak instead of just falling off. I'm just sprinkling this now on steak number 2. I'm just trying to get it all the way around so that every bite is going to have the flavoring. And we're going to do that. And the other nice thing when the seasoning sticks is less of it's going to fall off. Another steak seasoning you can use, I've done this with ribeye, I've also seen it done with prime rib actually, is olive oil. So you can sprinkle some of that on your steak and bake it or whatever. Okay, I'm going to put the seasoning up, and I'm going to wash my hands again, of course. Even though we're going to be touching more surfaces, it never hurts to try to kill some of these germs now. And there you go. Unfortunately, you can never be too clean in the kitchen, but that is always a lot harder sometimes than what it seems like, believe me. And okay, so I actually did have my foil out, but that's okay. So now I'm going to take my plate over to the grill. And the ribeye, at least, is kind of like flatter on one side and more curved on the other. So I prefer to lay the flat part on the grill, or if I was using the oven, I'd place the flat part in the pan. I don't know if it really matters, but there you go. Okay, they're now on the grill, and can you hear that sizzling? I'm going to stop for just a minute. All right, so
yes.
I'm going to... Yes, all right, Lucy
it.
says yes. Excellent. I hear those saliva juices gurgling over there, guys. That's totally awesome. All right. So now I'm going to set a timer, and we're going to flip these because it's on the grill. Set the timer for 25 minutes. Folks, I will tell you truthfully. If you ever hear me yelling at anybody, it's not at a person. I don't yell at people. But when it comes to smart assistants and smoke alarms, I will say some things that can make calls not family friendly, so I have to behave myself.
Yes, and if you tell them that they're annoying and stuff like that, they'll tell you that you're not very nice. At least that's what they
I've
tell me.
actually, guys, I shouldn't encourage this. I've actually found if I call Siri stupid, you stupid, blah, 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 she actually tends to understand me better. So there you go. Results may vary.
Last time I called her stupid, she told me I wasn't being very nice. So
I'll say, like, set the timer, you stupid, blah, blah, blah. It'll be like, set timer for 25 minutes, you stupid, blah, blah, blah. That's how you talk to her. You get some of the respect.
That's how you get her to
you know what, guys? We're ruining the all things tech call, or whatever the tech calls are called. So let's get back to in the kitchen. Wait a minute, is this in the kitchen with Courtney? No, this is Herbie's cooking corner. So, Tori, how are you cooking your tofu steaks?
I am doing them under the grill in my oven, which
All
I
right.
in. They are on a pan in there. I've just put them in. I didn't not need to set a timer with my device because my oven has its own timer, which I know roughly where I need to put it. So
there you go. Fancy schmancy. I remember ovens like that back in the day. I used to be able to set our oven timer. Okay, now let's talk about the garlic mashed potatoes. So, there are, of course, very different variants on how to make mashed potatoes. This is the way I'm going to do it. And I have a feeling that I'm going to be eliciting comments here, getting comments from people on what you all like to do differently. So if you can hold off on that. If you have any questions right now about what I'm doing, that's great. But I will open the floor for any alternative methods you want to bring up for any of the stuff that we are doing today. So.
And Herbie, you do have a raised hand.
All right, who do we have?
Jane?
Hi, I was wondering where do you get tofu steaks? I didn't know they.
you don't get tofu steaks generally. You make them. You get a block of tofu, you cut the tofu, and you turn it into steaks.
Okay,
There you go.
great.
So I got a block of tofu, and I pressed it to get as much of the water out as I could. I actually have a tofu press, so I just put it in there and left it a few hours, and it did the work for me. But you can do it just by pressing down on it firmly with like a chopping board or something. It's more work that way. You have to do effort anyway. And then you just, once it's been pressed, slice it and turn it into steaks.
Okay, guys, sorry, I do apologize, because I need to keep things moving along here. So I am now filling up the pot with water. What Tori was talking about was how to make tofu steaks. So you can take your example from the Bible. Press down, shaken up, and press together. That's basically what she does with the tofu block, is she'll cut a chunk off, press it down on the cutting board, and I guess you could use like your hands or a spatula, but probably hands would be the easiest, to press it down into a shape. All right. Oh, and the other place where I get my actual steaks from, I didn't really address that. I like the ones from Walmart the best, or HEB. I've tried the Whole Foods ones that I got from Amazon the other day. The one thing I didn't like about those is that I do prefer from, like, say, the regular grocery store is, like, those steaks came in different shapes. So, like, one was fatter and one was thinner. And so I prefer a little bit more consistency myself. But if you care about, if it matters to you if like your beef is grass-fed or whatever, that's going to depend on where you get your meat. And I don't have a problem with it, being healthy or anything like that. I just like consistency because it makes cooking a lot easier. So that's been my experience, at least. Okay, now let's talk about mashed potatoes. I've got a pot filled with water. I hope I use a big enough pot. I guess we're going to find out. And I'm going to turn on my kitchen fan because I know the smoke alarm is going to go off when I get the water boiling. So I've already gotten out my potatoes. I've washed them thoroughly. I have about 6 of them. And I've got a paring knife. And what I'm going to do is just cut them into small chunks. You can do whatever size you want, but I just like little small circles that are going to boil nicely, and then they're all going to get mashed together.
When you're boiling those, they tend to cook quicker if you do them in smaller pieces.
Yep. And so I'm kind of like cutting them into half circles. So I've got my potato, and I'm going to cut off the edge first. There we go. Now I'm going to slice that edge in half, just using a paring knife. It's not too sharp, but it cuts nicely into the potato, real easy like. And there you go. And so I chop the potato, I place the circle flat on the cutting board so that the inside of the potato is facing up. I chop downwards. Oh, that's right. I did not talk about this for a very good reason. Peeling the potatoes. Quite simply, I don't believe in it, never have. Got resentful when they made me do it at the School for the Blind. At first, though, I thought you had to do that for mashed potatoes. But thanks to Applebee's, I learned that you don't because they taste just fine with the skin on them. And the skin is the part that actually has all the nutrients anyway. So I recommend you don't peel them, no matter how you're using your potatoes. I'm kind of cutting
But
them
if
into
you
quarters,
do want
too.
to peel them, then do it carefully and watch where your fingers are.
Yep, watch where your fingers are. There are actual peelers that you can get. Make sure you wash the potato first because it's going to make the peel a lot easier to come off. And you'll be able to feel the difference, but you will definitely save yourself a lot of time, and maybe it makes them help. I mean, you're still going to, of course, have the starch of the potato, don't get me wrong. But, so we're just cutting these potatoes up into nice little chunks here. I'm not being too precise, but as you can hear, undoubtedly, I am going really fast. And by the way, Lucy, those steaks are smelling good. So you can ask your Alexa how long it takes for you to get from where you're at in Michigan to Houston, Texas by airplane. That might be the quickest. I'd rent a Concorde if I were you. So
I'm almost there.
all right.
She left early just to make sure she makes it in time.
You just have the slight problem of not actually knowing my address, and
Just follow the smell of the steaks.
you won't be able. Well, we're in Texas. There's a lot of cattle, so
Chanel likes Lucy, and I bet that Lucy's got a way to contact Chanel.
yes, she probably does. I don't have any objections to sharing now. I just need to know that you're coming over so I can make sure you get your steak. That's the only thing. I have no objections to sharing. No. Next time, it's just a good idea to ask ahead of time. Hey, can I drop by for dinner? Polite house guests and all that, you know. There was
She
a time
warned you
when,
she was on her way.
okay, yeah, but like yesterday would have been nice to know. I could have gotten one more steak. There was actually, this is a true story. There was a time once that my ex-girlfriend now, and she wasn't my ex back then, but we actually made a Thanksgiving dinner for a friend, and they decided not to show up after all. So that was kind of disheartening. We had another friend, though, who came over in their place and chowed down instead. So there you go. I don't know which is worse. You make dinner and then somebody comes over at the last minute, or you make a big dinner and then the person who's supposed to come over doesn't.
At least with the second option, you can have the leftovers if it comes to it the next day.
Yes, but this was a big Thanksgiving turkey dinner. I mean, like the whole turkey, mashed potatoes, the fix-up.
Okay, so you can have leftovers the next day and freeze some for days you don't want to cook.
Yes. All right, so I've now turned my pot to boiling, and I'm placing the potato chunks in the thing. I assure you, despite the banter, I actually have been working, guys. So, all right. So, like I said, I used 6 potatoes because I'm making sure that there's enough for us both, and there's plenty of leftover. But you can use, I'd probably use no less than, 4 potatoes. That's just my thought there. Okay, some of these could have been cut into smaller chunks, but that's okay. I think it'll be fine. So I did clean off my stove burner, but sometimes these things aren't good. Okay, now let's talk about the garlic aspect of it. So there are several ways you can do this. I'm going to use real garlic, but you can also use the minced garlic, which does affect the texture of the potatoes a little bit because you do taste the little chunks in there. And you can also use garlic powder. I'm going to use a mixture of real garlic and garlic powder.
Ooh,
So
nice.
I'm going to find my garlic powder. Garlic powder. That's for art style.
I absolutely love garlic potatoes. It's only that my dad's coming and
Yes.
he can't have them. Otherwise, I'd be making garlic potatoes right along with you.
All right, so I'm just letting her loose into the thing, and now we're going to add some real garlic. And that's just going to kind of like cook into the thing. I don't really... The powder should dissolve under the water. I don't think we really need to stir it. So the garlic, though, one thing you do need to know with real garlic, whenever you're cooking with it, it can burn easily, so I cook it last. So I kind of have the lid at a slanted angle on the pot just so that way some of the steam can escape from the water. And now let's talk about garlic. So you can actually cheat here because all you need to do is peel the garlic from the bulb. We don't need to worry about mincing the garlic. You can, but the water is going to soften it up to where when you mash it, it's all going to blend together. Now, before I get into the garlic, do we have any raised hands?
Liz.
Great, couple of things. First of all, if you do the potatoes, when you drain it, drain the potato water into something metal like a bowl. And Herbie, I will send you notes about
Right,
stuff
we're getting to that.
water.
Yep.
'Cause it's
Yeah.
really cool.
Liz,
Any questions on what I've done so far?
How long did you preheat? You're using a George Foreman grill. How long did you preheat that, do you think?
So I'm actually using an air fry. It's not a George Foreman grill, but you can use a George Foreman grill. Just the thing I don't like about those is because the way they cook, the seasoning really kind of sticks onto the steak and it makes for an interesting texture.
I'm sorry, try that again. I missed that. You don't like the George Foreman grill because when it cooks the seasoned steak, what happens?
The way the grill is formatted is you have these ridges. So you kind of get this ridged steak that the seasoning kind of burrows into. That's the disadvantage with doing steak on the Foreman grill, in my opinion, at least, especially a good one like the ribeye. Sirloin, it's not so bad. Burgers, it's not so bad. But
If you eat it in the oven, would you do
So-
it on broil or what?
you can do it on broil if you're. I've never really played much with the broil setting myself. That's what Tori's doing for her steaks. But you can cook them in the oven for about 40 to 60 minutes, just in a foil pan. But what I'm using, so I have an air fryer / grill combination. What it is it's an open grill, but it has an oven door. So.
Okay.
And what I'm going to do is I cook the steaks on it, and then I'm going to flip them about halfway through using a double spatula.
Got it. Double spatulas are terrific. I recommend
Yep.
when people go great.
Foreman grill takes, about 2 or 3 minutes to heat up,
Alright.
so if you're using that for anything.
That's a
And-
legit comment about the ridges. Yeah, I buy that. I understand that. And I have been concerned about doing anything because the stuff on whatever you've got on the meat or the veggies or the marinade tends to fall into the ridges. So it's not
Yes.
as good as it could be. My question for Tori is, if you use a broiler, I have a gas stove. Do you leave your oven door open or closed?
I always close it. I do not like to leave it open.
Good, neither do I. Okay, good, thank you. I don't have much experience using broilers. I'm pretty much vegetarian and we don't broil that much stuff. So
I only do sometimes with tofu, so
Right. No, I've tended to bake my tofu and bake it at like 425 or 400 or
yeah.
something.
Well, sometimes I'll bake it, sometimes I'll boil it, sometimes I'll fry it. Depends what I
Right,
want.
right. Right, yeah, I got it. Okay, thank you for being patient with me, folks.
You're welcome. And sorry, right now I'm just taking the peelings off the garlic. It's a little bit fun work here, but at least we're just peeling. And then I'm putting the peelings in a bowl, and then I'm going to dump that bowl into the garbage. I'm going to set all the other garlic into a separate bowl, and then I'm going to put it into the potato mixture all at once. Washing the garlic can help loosen the peel. Yes, I'll talk more Foreman grill in a little bit. I need to do another kitchen appliance call. First of all, do we have any raised hands?
We did not.
All right, a couple of things I do need to talk about. So I found out from the listener after the call, and I told them they should have actually mentioned this during the call so everybody can know that they had a vegetarian loaf last week where the loaf base was chickpeas. So there you go. There's another alternative for a vegetarian loaf is chickpeas.
And Herbie, just as I said, no raise hands, you have one. Michael.
All right. Are you going to be cooking steaks on your outdoor grill when you make a guest appearance on my cooking show? Not putting you on the spot.
I
or
will
anything
probably
like that,
do something more creative than steak, but we will see.
All right.
Yeah, maybe chicken. I did get this fancy thermometer sitting next to me that I'm excited to use for a little bit, so we'll talk about that again shortly. But Herbie, I had a
Excellent.
question for you. Do you salt the water when you boil your potatoes? Because I've heard mixed reviews on if it's necessary or not.
I do not salt the water, and if I want salt my potatoes, I will just add it after the fact. One reason I don't salt the water is because, Chanel is not as much of a salt person. And I guess I've never really found it necessary myself. Tori, did you have an opinion on this?
I only do it if I want the salt to be involved in the flavoring. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. The only difference it makes is to how your stuff is tasting regarding saltiness. So if you like the salty flavor, then go ahead and do it. If you don't, then you don't need to bother.
Copy that. Thank you to both of you.
All right, and we're hoping to get Michael in a future show. He has some good old fancy outdoor equipment to cook with, so and just want to make sure he doesn't forget because I think it'll be a very good show. And Michael will be. I think you're running the Jaws Q&A call today, correct?
Yes, I am at, I don't even remember, 4 p.m. Eastern.
Yep, 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm gonna try to come there on my Mac. So. Anyway, yeah, I know that sounds wrong. Coming on a Jaws call on my Mac, but then I've done some Mac calls on Windows too. I can talk tech, but anyway, hope you'll join for that and learn some good stuff about Jaws for Windows. By the way, if you are on the dark side, that is my recommended screen reader. I'm sorry, if you're on Windows, that is the screen reader I do recommend. Anyway, it's good though, and I could talk about some things where I do think it outperforms Jaws in one or two areas, but that's a whole other subject. But I will just briefly mention the remote feature. That's where I think NVDA especially is really good. Anyway, enough on tech, but I'm standing here peeling garlic. Things get a little bit boring. I think you can appreciate that.
You do have another raised hand.
All right, we have another raised hand.
That'll stop it being
Liz.
boring for you, Herbie.
Nope, you're fine. Liz.
Hey, comment about salt. Yeah, potatoes are a really good place for this example. Potatoes are so bland as a thing that you can add things like a quarter cup of chopped parsley or a half cup of chopped parsley, depending on how into chopped parsley you are. If you buy the flat leaf stuff, it's got more flavor than the curly. But you could also add a half cup or a quarter cup of chopped chives. You could add pepper. And the more you get used to using these extra ingredients, the less need you're going to have for salt, and the more you're going to be able to wean yourself slowly away from adding a lot of salt to a little salt to no salt. And it helps all kinds of health issues. So lower salt is kind of better than, if you're going to get a lot of salt that gets added by just using things. Milk has salt in it, cheese has salt in it, all kinds of stuff. Butter has usually got salt in it. So you're adding salt anyways.
I was going to be talking a little bit about that when I tell you what I've been putting in my Herbie potatoes in a bit.
Yeah, I just really...
One thing I will mention with the butter is I use the unsalted butter when I mash the potatoes. Definitely good points. Okay, so thank you for that, Liz. And why don't we hear about the Herbie potatoes?
Okay, so I have salt and pepper in mine because I do like the salty flavor. And I've also added some of the onion powder that I was using with my tofu because I could. And also some dried chives because that's what I felt like putting with the onion today. But I've also done it with fresh chives. I've done it with dried and fresh herbs of various types, rosemary, parsley, thyme, etc.
Well, you know what they say, parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme.
Yeah, basically. I just had to mention those ones. I know those are your favorite ones to make reference to. Anyway, so which ones you use are going to depend on your personal flavor preferences. But I've done them with all kinds of ones. And like I said, today I'm using salt, pepper, and onion powder because I can't use the garlic, and dried chives because, again, can't use the garlic.
All right. So we've got some big, fat garlic bulbs here today. I'm really impressed, actually. Sometimes we're not so fortunate. And peeling them, though, is tough work, let me tell you. But it's going to
but worth it.
It's going to be worth it. Okay, now we got some tinier bulbs here. All right, now next thing. So a couple of the things I forgot to mention. One, I am a big user of filtered water, even when cooking. Just gets a lot of the extra stuff that's in your water supply out of it. So I tend to do that, and it tastes a little bit better too. Now we're going to be doing the steamed broccoli as well, and that's going to be really easy. You can of course use either fresh or frozen. We're just going to cheat and use frozen for that one.
Some of us are.
Some of us are. Yeah, I'm going to just use, because we can just dump it in there, but you can use fresh broccoli as well if you want. I just like to keep me personally, I like to keep the fresh stuff more for salads or for air frying. Yep, you can air fry broccoli. It does taste pretty good. That's why I tend not to use the frozen stuff for steaming purposes, but that's just me. Okay, so we're going to
Fresh. That's why I
use fresh.
tend to use the fresh stuff for steaming processes.
So you use you use the frozen stuff for salad?
No. You said that's why I tend to not use
I don't use the fresh for steaming because I like to use it for salads or for air frying or whatever. So that's my personal preference. You can of course use any frozen vegetable, really: broccoli, corn, cauliflower. We picked broccoli today, but
I just prefer to use fresh in general, regardless of what I'm doing with it. For one thing, then I've got it available to do whatever I want with it. For another thing, my tortoise shares some of my vegetables, and the tortoise is better off having the fresh. So.
All right. So now my timer has gone off. So let's deal with our steak first. And I'm guessing the tortoise gets the hair up its, what if it doesn't get its fresh... Okay, wait.
Oh, you should see that the tortoise has quite a tantrum and will bash the tank front with its head and do it so much that it ends up flipping itself onto its back. If it doesn't get...
Well, it could flip the steaks and save the work for me. Just cook the steaks in the tortoise shell and... Okay. That wouldn't work.
Herbie, you have a raised hand.
All right, I'll get to them in just a second. Real quick, guys, I'm using my spatula to flip the steaks over, making sure they're even and not touching each other so they'll cook better. Set timer for 25 minutes. And then let me put the garlic and the potatoes, and we will get to the raised hand afterwards, or hands, however many we have. So I've got all the garlic cloves in one bowl, and I'm just going to lift the lid and take it off the pan real quick. And now I'm standing over the pot, and I'm going to pour. And let's see, if I turn off this fan, let's see if you can hear the potatoes bubbling. That is our water boiling from the potatoes, and I'm actually happy. So far, we have not had a smoke alarm incident today, so that makes me very happy. All right, Belinda, who have we got?
We have Jonathan.
Jonathan, my friend.
Hello, Herbie. Hi, friend.
Hello.
How long are you cooking the steak in that air fryer?
So I'm using the grill part, not the air fryer part. The air fryer takes a lot longer, at least with mine. I'm going to cook it for like 40 or so minutes, maybe more like 40 to 50, depending on how much done I want it to be. I'll see.
Okay. Is that on both sides or one side?
I'm doing about 20 minutes each per side, or more like 22 to 25 minutes. But how long you cook the steak is, of course, going to matter too, on how done you want it as well. So
yes,
that's something else to keep that in mind too. Jonathan has requested to do a stir fry, so we got that coming up. I also got a very tasty sounding recipe for chocolate chip cookies from Betty Crocker. We are going to try, and what was really cool about this recipe, it also had a vegan and gluten-free alternative as well. So Tori will give us her comments on the vegan one. I'm now filling my broccoli pot up with water. So that's what I'm doing here. And I'm going to get that cooking though last. I guess we can get it started now. We are also going to do a sesame chicken and a tofu scramble. So that is what we've got coming up on some of our future calls. Next week will be the tofu scramble. This will be interesting because I've had a little bit of experience making that in the past, but we're going to do that along with hash browns for next week. So yep, we're hitting the carbs a little bit, but we're gonna eating
And then
meatless.
we have a couple of raised hands.
It's full of protein.
Yep. Okay. So got a couple of raised hands. So guys, what I'm doing right now is I'm going to set my small burner to boiling. I've got the big pot on the other burner, and it's boiling with the potatoes, and we're going to check on that in a minute. All right. Who do we have?
First up, Lucy.
Lucy.
Okay, I was just going to say for the steamed broccoli, I have a vegetable steamer. And this is like made of metal and it's got holes all the way through it, little tiny holes. And it's like folded up and you can unfold it to the size of your pan. And it has little legs on it, so you set it in just a tad of water in the bottom of the pot. And you put your broccoli inside this little basket that you folded into your pan. And so your broccoli doesn't actually sit in the water. The steam comes up from the water and cooks it. And it's
nice.
really, really good.
Well,
Nice.
I should have you bring you a vegetable steamer when you come over, because I'll make the steak, you make the veggies, and
Oh, all right.
all right. And by the way, folks, just to quickly mention, because I forgot, Lucy is going to have games to play with Lady A today at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central. Hope you will join her for that, as you'll learn about all kinds of cool things and that you can do with your Alexa device as it regards to games. So be sure to join her for that. And next week will be another round of Abacus Made Simple. No, I still need to start my calculator Made Simple, but she's showing you the hard way. So you go from the tech to the non-tech with Lucy's calls. Isn't that interesting? So hope you will join her for that. Okay, who do we have next? And can you give me a time check as well,
Sandra.
please?
Sandra, and
Sandra.
you have about 17 minutes.
Hiya, can you
All
hear
right.
me?
Yep, you're coming in loud and clear.
You may or may not have covered this, but how do you know that A, the water's boiled, and or that your food you're boiling is boiled?
Excellent question for both. First one, with the water boiled, you can hear it because it's going to make a bubbling sound, and that tells you that your water is boiling. You should also hear like a hissing sound as well. With the food being boiled, I like to use like a spoon to tell me, so I can feel the texture through the spoon. And that's what we're about to do with the potatoes, actually, is feel them. Okay, yeah, they're feeling soft. Once you've had experience with boiling, you can kind of make a time gauge too. Like broccoli takes about 5 minutes. Okay, yeah, these potatoes are looking good. I'm just kind of stirring it around a little bit.
And then more generally, like with meat, boiling meat. I know we're not doing that today, but like, how would you know that? Let's say you were trying to boil chicken or boil something else.
That's a good question. And chicken, of course, I would be a lot more cautious. I'd give it about, I think, like 20 minutes, I think is a safe temperature for boiling meat. And boneless chicken obviously would take less time, I think, than like chicken with the bone in. I will go look, because it's actually only one time I've ever really boiled meat, and that was for an almost KFC fried chicken recipe, which... Oh, look, I'm shopping at Whole Foods with Amazon. I should see if I can get the spices for that. More of an interesting fried chicken recipe that actually calls for the chicken to be boiled first before we put it in the fryer. So about 10 to 20 minutes, I think. And then, of course, I would take it out with a fork and use that to test for doneness. Michael just recently got a very cool meat thermometer. I don't know if it'll work for boiled food, but you could use like a meat thermometer if you wanted to try to tell you that way. Tori, did you have anything else you want to add?
No.
All right. So hopefully that helps you there, Sandra. And you can always cut, like with the meat too, you can always use like a knife to cut into it and see how it feels. Like, does it feel raw or does it feel cooked? Kind of like just telling the consistency. And also, if you're following any particular recipes, follow that. And finally, one other thing to consider if you're boiling meat or boiling anything is what you're boiling, frozen or thawed or whatever. Like in the case of the potatoes, they're non-perishable. That can add into the time factor as well of what you're boiling. I'd have the meat thawed if you're gonna boil it, but if you're gonna boil it from a frozen state, I would definitely give it even more time.
If in doubt, cook it a bit longer.
Yep.
Especially with chicken.
Yeah, especially with chicken, definitely. Do we have anybody else?
Not at the moment.
Okay, so I'm going to turn off this fan, And I want to just see, so Sandra and everybody else, let's see if you can hear the broccoli. Okay, the potatoes are making more of a boiling sound than the broccoli is actually, but I can tell that something's wrong because the broccoli is not boiling the way it should be. Another thing you can tell with the stove is if your pot has a good handle, you'll be able to feel the vibration of the boiling through the handle. So that's another tip. Now let's talk about draining the potatoes. Liz mentions just draining them into a metal bowl or whatever. I am going to go ahead though and just use the sink that has worked well, and I can run cold water if things get a little bit too steamy, but I'm letting the water cool off a little bit. And so let's talk about draining the potatoes. This is perhaps the most trickiest part of the whole operation. I think so anyway, because you want to make sure you use the right pot. I have these big, humongous pots that are really good because they have a lot of room and you can cook a lot in them. But the disadvantage is they have these tiny handles. And while they don't stick out, it makes it a lot harder to lift from the stove. But my medium-sized pot, which I've got right here, that has a nice, lovely handle that sticks out. You do have to be careful not to knock it if you're dealing with a two-pot system on your stove. And I can use it to lift up. Now, we're lucky today, sometimes my lid is also boiling hot, and I have to use an oven glove to take it off, but this lid for this pot has a nice cool handle, so we're going to take that off. Now, just with 6 potatoes, even though they're chunked and whatnot, they are definitely heavy. So we have to be extremely careful here. So you can either wait for these to cool down quite a bit, which I'm going to do because I just realized I forgot to take out my stick butter for the mashing, but that's okay. We will make that work. Now, one disadvantage you'll have with a gas stove is you're going to have to hear that boiling over the hissing sound that the gas jets make. Yep, we're talking about gas jets, not sugar jets this time. If you want to know what I'm talking about with sugar jets, come to my accessible online games call every other Wednesday, and you will find out all about them. That's the sound you want to be listening for to tell you that your stuff is boiling. All right, so I'm going to take my mashed potatoes. I'm bringing the pot over to the sink. Well, you got to use your muscles here. And if you're not comfortable holding the pot one-handed, then use oven gloves, and you can use your other hand to balance the pot. And now I'm just going to tilt the pot into the strainer. Out comes the water into the sink. Out, out, out. All right. And we want all that water out of there. And now we've got a heavy sieve or strainer, whatever you want to call it. So now I'm going to set my pot back on the stove. It's relatively dry. Well, I could go ahead and use my towel to dry it off the inside a little bit more, because actually there's a little bit of potato that did come under the side there, but I care about the bottom. We're going to set our pot back on the stove because we're going to use it again, but not for cooking, for a totally different purpose. So I'm going to take my sieve. This one is a nice straightforward plastic one that has 2 solid handles and doesn't fold in or anything like that. And now I can shake, 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 shake the strainer, shake the strainer. Okay, yeah. Anyway, and what we're doing here though is just getting all the excess water out. And I can feel that these potatoes are very soft. You can't eat them, but they are very soft. So there, I think all the water is out of them. I'm going to return them to my pot now. And I'm going to pour in. Oops, one fell on the floor. That wasn't good. All right, I'll deal with that. And now I'm going to turn off my broccoli because I have a horrible feeling it's going to become mush. And mush broccoli is not that good. Serve them along with the other stuff. You'll have to come on the Neighborhood Coffee Klatch, which is next hour, by the way, to find out how they turned out.
Speaking of the fact you're waiting for your steaks to finish, if you're doing like I am and doing tofu steaks, they would be done by now. Mine are, because they only need the roughly 25 minutes that I gave them, and then they are nicely done. Because tofu does not need a lot of meat.
Nope, it does not. All right, so now I'm going to get out a potato masher, and I'm also going to get out a butter knife. What we got for you, by the way, hopefully you'll join Belinda and myself this Thursday as we'll be working as co-facilitators for our Blind Since Birth call. And that's going to be at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 Central. What will we be discussing? Well, tune in to find out. And also, we had a very successful sports call this last Sunday, and so I think we're going to be having another one later this month. We tried to initiate the baseball draft and bring in a third person from the minor leagues, but they don't seem to be interested, even though they were telling us what to do. But we're going to keep trying, so... Or maybe we won't, I don't know. Anyway, so I'm going to cut off a square of butter here, and I'm going to place it in my pan. And I'm going to pot, rather, and I'm going to continue to do this with the butter. This works a lot nicer than doing the entire stick. I like to use the whole stick of butter because I think it really adds flavor to the potatoes, but if you prefer them not as flavorful or you want them more dry, you can use little to no butter. Some people I know use milk for their mashed potatoes. And that is definitely another way of doing them if you so desire. I'm just going to use butter. And now I'm going to take my potato masher. And what the potato masher looks like, it's rectangular. It has a curved handle on one side and it has a flat part with holes on the other. And I'm going to put it over my pot and just mash down. Oh boy. And you want these potatoes done because they're going to mash that much easier. And the larger the amount of potatoes, the harder it is at first for them to get mashed. There's a lot of muscle work here, guys. Oh boy. I see why people buy instant mashed potatoes, but you don't have to do this part, that's for sure. You just have to deal with whatever they put in their potatoes instead. So, all right, Tori, any more tips you want to give us?
On this particular call, because of the fact I was cooking something different during the call, I don't really have all that much to add. So if anyone else has any tips they'd like to include, that would probably be a good
now's a
time.
good time. So Liz, if you want to talk about your mashed potato tips or
we have
whatever.
Jonathan with a raised hand.
Jonathan, yes.
Ruby, what kind of math tool are you using there?
So it's just a potato masher.
Where can you get it?
You can get it from any kitchen appliance store or from Walmart.
Okay.
I'll look to see what they have on Amazon, and it's just basically a potato masher. Another thing you need to know about this thing is the potatoes will stick to the inside of this thing, so you will have to use your hands to get them out. And we're mashing them butter right into the potatoes, and there you go. Another time I'll talk about baked potatoes. We're going to be talking about hash brown potatoes next week. Do we have any other raised hands?
Monique.
I was saying that I'm glad you told us how you can make the mashed potatoes, because I was always told you had to use milk. So
No, you do not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't use milk myself, even though I was always told that, because of the fact that until they became more readily available, milk wasn't really an option for me at all until I could have the vegan milks. You can just mash them literally just by mashing them without adding anything to them if you want. It's just adding things like butter and milk, sometimes both, sometimes one or the other, will make them just that bit fluffier or creamier.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys, we got to run. It's been fun. I will see you all next week. One thing I did not get a chance to mention on the call because of running out of time is you want to repeat the process with draining the water out of the broccoli using either the same sieve but washed out or a different one. And then you can just serve it. And if you want to add seasonings to the broccoli like butter or some garlic powder or whatever, you can do that by adding it to the water before you bring it to a boil.